Good evening, and welcome back to the Pastor Study. Before we get started this evening, I do need to address one issue. I'm sure some of you are wondering what happened to Sunday's message. Unfortunately, while we were recording, we had some, what I would call technical difficulties, and the service did not get recorded at all. For that, I apologize. Hopefully, we'll get it right this next Sunday. For tonight, with tomorrow being Thanksgiving, I wanted to take a few moments and give some thought to this idea of giving thanks. Certainly, the concept is not unique to the United States, although we have a national holiday that was initiated, at least the event was initiated by the Pilgrims as they were giving thanks for God's blessings to them as they were trying to settle a new land. Since then, it's become something quite different. Football games and turkey and pecan pie, certainly. But for us as born-again believers, it's something entirely different. In Psalm 91, verse 1, David writes, "It is good to give thanks to the Lord and to make music to his name." From the very beginning, David, who was known as a musician, who loved to worship, many of his psalms are all about giving thanks to the Lord for his graciousness and for his mercy. Certainly, it's been a difficult year for all of us. Dealing with COVID from the outset, or at least by March, it had hit all of us in one form or another. Our social lives have been turned upside down. At Thanksgiving, many of us are not getting to spend the time with family that we normally do. We've not traveled. We've not taken vacations. Some of us have lost our jobs. Others have had friends or family who have gotten very, very sick and or have died from COVID, and I've had both. Certainly, in one sense, we could say, what is there to give thanks for? Well, Paul writes in 1 Thessalonians, chapter 5, verse 18. He says this, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." So from the very beginning, he says, if you're a believer, if you're in Christ Jesus, God's will is for you, for us, to learn how to give thanks in all circumstances. Now, that's not for what is going on, certainly, but in all circumstances. And that's not always easy. It's hard to, for example, give thanks in the middle of this pandemic that we're going through and the way it has upended all of our lives and turned things upside down. I think the key to that is found in Colossians chapter 3, verse 17. "Whatever you do, whether in word or in deed, do it all in the name of the Lord, giving thanks to God the Father through him." We can't just rise up one day and begin to give thanks despite the circumstances. Most of us are not going to rise to that level. But if we begin to make Thanksgiving a daily part of our process, a daily part of our prayer time, a daily part of the time we spend with the Lord, and even as we go through the day doing things we enjoy doing, or maybe doing things we don't enjoy doing, because Paul says, whatever you do, whether it's in word or in deed, he didn't say if you're doing things you enjoy. He says, everything that we do it all in the name of the Lord. That is, we're doing it as if we were doing it unto him. And that we're to give thanks to God the Father through him, that is, through Jesus. So we begin to learn how to give thanks in all circumstances by beginning to give thanks in everything that we do. Thank him for the job that we have. Thank him for the provision he's made. Thank him for something to do rather than having nothing to do. If we look, there are so many things that we can give thanks for. The problem is, at least for some of us, it's just an attitude issue, a matter of changing our mindset, putting, as my wife would say as a mental health counselor, a different tape in the tape player of our brain and playing something different. Certainly for some of us, it is a mindset, and yet that's what we're called to do. To give thanks in all circumstances, again, not for all circumstances, but in all circumstances, because this is God's will for us. This is what he wants us to do. And if that's God's will and we're not doing it, then quite frankly, we find ourselves in disobedience. And again, how do we do it? We begin by doing everything that we do as if unto the Lord, and we bring ourselves by habit, by continuation, we bring ourselves to that point by giving thanks as we do those things. If we can learn to do that, I think the giving thanks in all circumstances becomes much easier. In fact, it'll become almost automatic, simply because we become people of thanksgiving, people of praise, people of worship. And if I could, one last thought as you prepare for Thanksgiving, take some time, whether it's during your Thanksgiving meal or as you get together as a family, to turn off all the externals, whether that's the football game or parades or whatever else you may be doing. And take a few moments and just remember what you are thankful for as a family. What has God done for you in the midst of this crisis, in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of everything else going on? What has He done for you to bless you in the middle of all of this? And with that, I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving, a blessed Thanksgiving, and I look forward to seeing you next week in the Pastor Study. God bless and goodbye.